There was a time when Detroit ruled the world, when chrome, horsepower, and American pride defined the open road. But by the 1970s, something went wrong. The oil crisis hit, shortcuts were taken, and the cars that once symbolized strength started falling apart. Sometimes literally. Fires, rust, and failure became headlines. These weren't just bad cars, they were the machines that nearly destroyed America's automotive empire. So, buckle up. As we look back at 20 cars from the 1970s that destroyed Detroit's reputation. Back in the early 70s, gas prices were climbing, imports from Japan were everywhere, and Ford wanted something small and cheap to fight back. Enter the Ford Pinto, America's budget hero. It looked simple, light, and easy to maintain. But behind that innocent smile was a time bomb on wheels. You see, Ford engineers placed the gas tank right behind the rear bumper, and in even a minor crash, it could burst into flames. News reports of Pintos exploding after rear-end collisions shocked the nation. The phrase Pinto Inferno started showing up in newspapers, and lawsuits piled higher than the car itself. People joked that owning a Pinto was like driving a Molotov cocktail with seatbelts. At first, sales were strong. Gas was expensive and the Pinto was cheap. But as stories spread, the car's reputation went up in smoke. By the late 70s, it became a symbol of everything wrong with Detroit's cost-cutting and corporate greed. Even decades later, when people hear Ford Pinto, they don't think compact car. They think fire hazard. Did your family ever own a Pinto? When Chevrolet launched the Vega, they promised a little car that thinks big. And for a moment, America believed them. It was sleek, affordable, and perfect for families trading in their gas guzzlers during the oil crisis. But once the first owners took it home, reality hit. And hit hard. The Vega was famous for rusting faster than any car in its class. Rain? Snow? Even morning dew could leave orange freckles across its shiny paint. Its aluminum engine sounded impressive, until it started overheating and warping under pressure. Before long, drivers realized their future of small cars couldn't even handle a road trip without a tow truck. By 1973, mechanics nicknamed it the Vega Bomb. Dealers tried to fix the damage with recalls, but the public had lost faith. Many cars from the 70s had problems, but few fell from grace as fast as the Vega. For Chevy, it was supposed to be the car of tomorrow, but it ended up being the cautionary tale of today. When the Mustang II arrived in 1974, people expected a new stallion. Instead, they got a pony on crutches. After the gas crisis of '73, Ford decided to downsize their legendary muscle car. And boy, did they go small. Gone were the thunderous V8 engines and the roar that shook drive-in parking lots. In their place? A polite little four-cylinder that sounded more like a sewing machine than a sports car? Sure, the Mustang II looked sharp on TV. It even got a boost from Charlie's Angels. Those white and blue Cobra II models made it seem glamorous again. But when you actually drove one, the only thing thrilling was hoping you'd make it up a hill without stalling. Car critics tore it apart, calling it the Mustang without muscle. And longtime fans, they felt betrayed. The Mustang had once symbolized freedom and power. Now it symbolized compromise. To be fair, it wasn't all bad. It sold well in its first years because Americans were desperate for fuel efficiency. But today, when people talk about the Mustang II, it's usually followed by a sigh and the words, "What were they thinking?" Did you ever ride in a Mustang II? Now here's a name that fits perfectly, Gremlin. Because owning one often meant dealing with little monsters under the hood. The AMC Gremlin was America's first subcompact, built to compete with the growing wave of imports. But instead of sleek Japanese precision, AMC gave us something that looked, well, unfinished. It had the front half of a Hornet and a back end that looked like someone just stopped drawing halfway through. Still, it had charm. It was cheap, easy to park, and oddly lovable. Kids in the 70s remember seeing Gremlins everywhere, at the mall, at the gas station, even in cartoons. But mechanically, that's another story. The Gremlin suffered from rushed production and poor quality control. Rust, overheating, electrical issues. You name it, this little car had it. Drivers joked that you didn't fix a Gremlin. You just hoped it behaved that day. Despite all that, it sold surprisingly well for a while. Maybe people loved the name, or maybe they were just being patriotic, choosing American over import. Either way, the Gremlin became an icon of awkward design. So bad, it's now kind of cool. Today, collectors hunt them down for nostalgia's sake, calling them quirky classics. But back then, they were just quirky, period. When the Chevette rolled off the line, GM swore it was America's answer to the gas crisis. A thrifty little ride built to save your wallet. And, well, it did save on gas. Everything else, though, not so much. Its tiny four-banger struggled to climb hills. The steering felt loose, and every bump rattled the dash like a baby's toy. Inside, the vinyl cracked, the knobs broke, and if you turned the heater on, you could smell the carpet melting. Still, people bought them, millions in fact, because they were cheap and easy to fix. But cheap and easy doesn't age well. Most Chevettes ended their days in junkyards long before they hit 100,000 miles. Looking back, it's hard to believe GM sold the same car in South America until the late 90s. Down there, it became a cult classic. Up here, a punchline. The Volaré and Aspen were supposed to replace two legends, the Valiant and the Dart. Big shoes to fill, and Chrysler stumbled right out of the gate. When they debuted, the ads bragged about comfort, smooth handling, and American pride. But within a year, owners were lining up at dealerships, not to buy, but to complain. Rust ate through the fenders, doors wouldn't close right, and engines stalled without warning. By 1977, Chrysler was issuing recall after recall for everything from brakes to suspension bolts. Mechanics joked that the Volaré was Spanish for "won't fly." Even the company's executives admitted they rushed it to market before it was ready. What's sad is that these cars looked decent on the outside. Wide grills, chrome trim, and that classic 70s stance. But beneath the shine was one of the worst-built chassis Detroit ever produced. For many owners, it was their last Chrysler. And for the company, it was a hard-learned lesson about cutting corners in the era of cost crisis. In the mid-70s, Ford wanted to prove that luxury didn't have to come with a Cadillac price tag. Their answer was the Ford Granada, and its twin, the Mercury Monarch. They called it European elegance, American style. And at first glance, it looked the part. Square lines, vinyl roofs, fake wood, and chrome everywhere. But once you got behind the wheel, that illusion faded fast. The Granada handled like a shopping cart full of bowling balls. The steering was heavy, the brakes soft, and the suspension bounced like a waterbed on wheels. Inside, the luxury trim was mostly plastic, pretending to be walnut, and every rattle reminded you this was no Mercedes. Still, Ford's ads were convincing. Families saw those glossy commercials and thought they were buying something classy. What they got was a car that broke down often and leaked oil even more often. Mechanics loved them, because they kept the lights on at the shop. By the end of the decade, the Granada and Monarch became symbols of Detroit's obsession with appearances over performance. Did your family ever fall for one of these budget luxury cars back in the day? Now this one, you could spot it a mile away. The AMC Pacer looked like a fishbowl on wheels. Round glass, wide hips, and a front end that made you wonder if someone at the factory just gave up halfway. When it debuted, AMC promised it would be the car of the future. And in a strange way, they were right. It looked futuristic, just not in a good way. It was short, wide, and built almost entirely of glass, which made it feel like driving inside a greenhouse. On hot days, owners said the car could cook you faster than a microwave dinner. Under the hood, things weren't much better. The Pacer was heavy, underpowered, and drank gas like a pickup. AMC even planned a rotary engine to make it smoother, but that idea was scrapped, leaving the Pacer slow, loud, and awkward. Still, you can't talk about the Pacer without mentioning Wayne's World. That movie turned it into a pop culture legend, complete with the Bohemian Rhapsody headbanging scene. But back in the 70s, most folks were headbanging because their Pacer wouldn't start. Some collectors love it today for its oddball charm. But most Americans remember it as the weirdest mistake AMC ever made. And in a decade full of strange ideas, that's saying something. When Chrysler launched the Córdoba, they wanted to bring luxury to the working man. And who better to sell that dream than actor Ricardo Montalban, standing in a cream-colored suit, talking about rich Corinthian leather. That line alone became legendary, maybe even more famous than the car itself. At first glance, the Córdoba looked classy. Long hood, wide chrome grille, plush seats. It had presence, but behind all that polish was a car that couldn't live up to its own commercial. The V8 engines were thirsty and sluggish, and the handling was soft, like driving a sofa on roller skates. Chrysler wanted smoothness, but they went too far. You could take a turn and feel like the car might just lie down for a nap. And while the interior looked expensive, the quality didn't last. Buttons fell off, the dash cracked, and the leather faded faster than disco fashion. Still, for a while, the Córdoba was a hit. Americans loved the idea of affordable elegance, and those ads made everyone believe it. But when gas prices spiked and repair bills piled up, the charm wore off. Today, people remember the name mostly for Montalban's voice, that calm, confident tone that sold dreams of sophistication. As for the car itself, well, it's a reminder that luxury and quality aren't always the same thing. Now here's a car that fooled a lot of folks. The Monte Carlo looked like it had it all, and long, low, and dripping with style. In an era of muscle cars fading away, it seemed like a final glimpse of power and beauty. But once you got behind the wheel, the illusion cracked. It was big, heavy, and slow to respond, like a linebacker trying to dance ballet. The steering felt vague, and cornering was more of a suggestion than a guarantee. And while it looked fast, the smaller engines under the hood were anything but thrilling. Owners quickly learned the Monte Carlo wasn't built for performance. It was built for cruising, for showing off at the drive-in, not burning rubber at the stoplight. Unfortunately, it didn't even hold up well as a cruiser. Rust became a common problem, and interior trim started falling apart after just a few years. Still, the Monte Carlo had a following. Some loved its look so much that they didn't care how it drove. And decades later, those smooth body lines and wide rear fenders still scream, 1970s America. It's one of those cars that looked better in memory than in motion. Beautiful on the outside, disappointing on the inside. Like a disco star who couldn't carry a tune. Still with us on this nostalgic journey? Drop a yes in the comments so we know you're enjoying it. You probably don't remember seeing too many Plymouth Crickets. And there's a reason for that. This little British import barely made a sound before it disappeared from American roads. The Cricket was Chrysler's attempt to compete with small Japanese cars flooding the market. It was actually a rebadged Hillman Avenger from England, and on paper it looked promising. Compact, efficient, and affordable. But the moment those cars hit American driveways, things went downhill, fast. The engines were underpowered, the electrical systems were unreliable, and the build quality, well, let's just say it didn't survive US winters very well. Rust appeared before the first oil change, and getting replacement parts took weeks, sometimes months. By the time Chrysler tried to fix its image, the reputation was already dead. American drivers didn't want British charm if it came with mechanical nightmares. Dealers stopped stocking them, owners traded them in for Datsuns or Toyotas, and the Cricket faded into obscurity almost overnight. If you ever spot one sitting in a barn, you're not looking at a collectible. You're looking at a survivor. Now here's a name that promised strength. Matador, the bullfighter. But in reality, AMC brought a knife to a gunfight. The Matador debuted as a bold-looking mid-size car with a striking front end and flashy design. It even got its moment in the spotlight in the 1974 James Bond movie The Man with the Golden Gun, where it magically transformed into a flying car. But off the big screen, the only thing that took off was AMC's list of warranty claims. Drivers complained about sluggish handling, heavy steering, and an overall feeling of clumsiness. It was as if the car couldn't decide what it wanted to be: sporty, family-friendly, or luxury. Instead, it ended up being none of the above. The suspension felt floaty, The brakes wore out too soon, and AMC's small budget meant cheap materials all around. Inside, the dashboard squeaked, the seats sagged, and the whole thing rattled like a worn-out carnival ride. It's a shame, really. The Matador had personality. It looked bold, almost futuristic for its time. But all that style couldn't hide its flaws. By the late 70s, the Matador's name had become ironic. The bullfighter was the one getting beat. Today, car enthusiasts remember it fondly, not because it was good, but because it represented AMC's fearless and sometimes foolish creativity. They swung big, missed hard, and left behind one of the strangest cars of the decade. The Lincoln Versailles was supposed to be Ford's elegant answer to the Cadillac Seville, a smaller, refined luxury car for the modern age. But what people actually got was a Ford Granada, wearing a tuxedo. You see, Ford took the Granada, added a bit more chrome, swapped in leather seats, and slapped on a Lincoln badge. Then they tripled the price and told America it was luxury. At first, some buyers fell for it. They liked the idea of affordable prestige. But it didn't take long for folks to realize the Versailles was just smoke and mirrors, a marketing trick wrapped in fake wood trim. Underneath, it drove exactly like a Granada. Clunky steering, average brakes, and a ride that felt more used car lot than executive class. Even worse, the fit and finish were sloppy for a car carrying the Lincoln name. Critics shredded it, calling it a luxury car without the luxury. Sales tanked, and by 1980 the Versailles quietly vanished, taking a chunk of Lincoln's reputation with it. The Dodge Charger of the 1960s was an icon, loud, muscular, and proudly American. It was the kind of car that shook the pavement and scared the neighbors. But by the mid-70s, the oil crisis and emission laws had tamed the beast. The 1975 Charger SE was the proof. It wore the same legendary name, but that's where the magic ended. This new Charger was heavier, slower, and softer, a shadow of its former self. Under the hood, the once mighty V8 had been neutered for fuel economy. Acceleration was sluggish and gas mileage was still awful. Even the styling had changed. Long gone was the aggressive fastback look. In its place, a bloated personal luxury coupe that looked more at home in a retirement community than on a racetrack. Fans of the original Charger felt betrayed. They didn't want comfort, they wanted chaos, thunder, and tire smoke. Instead, Dodge gave them fake wood, soft seats, and the slowest muscle car on the block. By the end of the decade, the Charger name had lost its fire. It wouldn't return to glory until decades later, when Dodge finally remembered what muscle meant. Do you remember when Dodge tried to turn the Charger into a luxury car? Or did you, like most people, pretend that version never existed? The Oldsmobile Omega sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie. Bold, futuristic, powerful. But the car itself? It was about as thrilling as a damp sandwich. Built on the same platform as the Chevy Nova, the Omega was supposed to blend Oldsmobile comfort with compact practicality. Instead, it blended mediocrity with disappointment. From the outside, it looked fine. Nothing flashy, nothing offensive. But the moment you turned the key, things started to go wrong. Its engines were underpowered, the ride was rough, and the build quality was, well, hit or miss would be generous. Owners quickly learned the Omega was no rocket ship. Dashboard knobs came off in your hand, door panels rattled, and the suspension made every pothole feel like a crater. Even the name Omega, the last letter of the Greek alphabet, turned out to be prophetic. For Oldsmobile, this car marked the beginning of the end. By the late 70s, it had earned a reputation as one of GM's most forgettable creations. And while a few diehards still defend it, most folks just laugh and say, "Yeah, we had one of those." For a while. The name Skyhawk promised speed, grace, and freedom, soaring above the rest. But once you drove one, it felt more like a pigeon with a broken wing. This compact coupe was Buick's attempt to appeal to younger buyers in the mid-70s. They wanted something small, sporty, and modern. Unfortunately, what they got was slow, heavy, and painfully average. The Skyhawk was built on the same platform as the Chevy Monza, and inherited all its problems. tight interiors, weak engines, and handling that felt like you were steering through pudding. The car was meant to feel sporty, but when you hit the gas, nothing really happened. To make things worse, quality control at the time wasn't Buick's strong suit. Rattles, leaks, and overheating were common. And while the ads showed it zipping through open highways, in reality, the Skyhawk spent more time sitting in the shop than flying down the road. Still, it wasn't all bad. Some people actually liked its look. Sleek lines, pop-up headlights, and that distinct 70s flair. But the performance never matched the promise. For Buick, the Skyhawk became a reminder that you can't win young drivers with old ideas. These days, you might see one at a classic car show, and it'll turn heads. Mostly from people saying, "Wow, I haven't seen one of those in 40 years." The Plymouth Fury was a legend. In the 1960s, it roared through police chases, muscle car showrooms, and Hollywood screens. But by the mid-70s, that legend had slowed down a lot. The Fury that rolled out in 1975 wasn't furious at all. It was big, heavy, and tired. A gas-guzzling dinosaur from a world that no longer existed. Emission laws, oil shortages, and budget cuts had drained the fire right out of it. Under the hood, the once powerful V8s were choked down by smog regulations. Performance dropped, handling got worse, and gas mileage was downright embarrassing. The car still looked imposing. Long hood, square body, all chrome and attitude. But it moved like a couch on wheels. It wasn't just the engine either. The quality slipped too. Rattles, leaks, and failing transmissions became part of the Fury experience. By the time the police department stopped buying them, Plymouth knew the end was near. Ironically, the Fury found a strange kind of fame again in the horror movie Christine, as a 1958 model possessed by evil. And honestly, for the 70s version, that might have been the only way to get it moving fast again. When Ford released the Maverick, they called it a revolutionary new kind of car. And in fairness, it was revolutionary for about 5 minutes. The Maverick was Ford's budget-friendly answer to the wave of imports from Japan. It was small, simple, and cheap, just under $2,000 brand new. And for a while, Americans loved it. It sold like crazy. But then the problems started piling up. Rust ate through the body faster than wax could cover it. The doors rattled, the engine vibrated, and the ride felt like you were sitting on a paint can rolling down the road. Sure, it was affordable, but it looked and sounded like it. Even though the Maverick was meant to be economical, the early models guzzled fuel like larger sedans. And while Ford promoted it as fun and youthful, the car handled about as gracefully as a shopping cart in a windstorm. Still, the Maverick became a familiar sight in driveways across America. Everyone seemed to know someone who owned one. That neighbor, that uncle, or maybe your first car out of high school. For many, it was the car that taught them how to drive and how to use jumper cables. Looking back now, the Maverick has a certain charm. It represents a time when cars were simple, affordable, and just a little unreliable, but still part of the family. Did you or your family ever own a Ford Maverick? And if you did it ever actually make it through winter? The AMC Hornet had a tough job. It was supposed to save a company that was already running on fumes, and for a moment, it almost did. When it debuted in 1970, the Hornet looked clean and practical. Not too big, not too small. It came in all sorts of versions, sedans, hatchbacks, even wagons. And it sold well enough to keep AMC alive for a few more years. But under the surface, the Hornet had its own swarm of problems. Rust showed up early, wiring issues were common, and the car's performance was, politely put, uninspired. It wasn't fast, it wasn't fancy, and it wasn't particularly well built. Still, the Hornet had personality, that kind of quirky charm AMC was known for. It even became a movie star, jumping off a broken bridge in The Man with the Golden Gun during one of the wildest James Bond stunts ever filmed. That moment on screen looked thrilling, but for real-life owners, just getting to the grocery store without a breakdown was exciting enough. By the time the Hornet buzzed off the market, AMC had already shifted its hopes to the Gremlin and the Pacer. Two more gambles that didn't exactly pay off. They never stopped trying, even when the odds were stacked against them. The Dodge Monaco SE was meant to bring back the glory of American full-size luxury. What it brought instead was a parking headache and an empty wallet. This beast was massive, nearly 19 feet long, and heavier than a small boat. It had the looks of authority. After all, police departments use them in the Blues Brothers movie. But for the average driver, owning one felt like piloting a small tank with a drinking problem. Fuel economy? Forget it. You could practically watch the gas gauge move every time you hit the pedal. And because of new emission regulations, the once powerful V8 had been declawed, leaving a car that sounded mean but moved slow. Handling was another story. You didn't so much steer it as negotiate with it. The Monaco's interior was roomy and comfortable, sure, but the build quality didn't hold up. Vinyl cracked, dashboards warped, and those soft seats? They turned into foam puddles after a few summers. For many owners, the Monaco represented the end of an era. The Monaco may have failed as a car, but it succeeded as a time capsule. And we end our list with a car that perfectly sums up the spirit and the downfall of the 1970s automotive dream. It wasn't built by Ford, Chevy, or Chrysler, but by a man named Malcolm Bricklin, who truly believed he could change the world. His creation was called the SV-1, short for Safety Vehicle 1. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie. Gull-wing doors, bright orange body, acrylic panels that gleamed under the sun. It was bold, futuristic, and unlike anything America had ever seen. But just like so many dreams from that decade, the SV-1 burned bright and faded fast. The heavy frame made it slow, the gull-wing doors jammed constantly, and the safety car that was supposed to protect drivers sometimes trapped them inside. Production costs soared, reliability plummeted, and by 1976, just 2 years later, the company was gone. Still, you have to admire the ambition. The Bricklin wasn't built out of greed or corporate panic. It was built out of hope. The belief that one person could take on Detroit and build something better. It failed spectacularly, but beautifully. Because the story of the Bricklin SV-1 isn't just about a bad car. It's about a decade when America dared to experiment, even if it meant crap. Thank you for watching. If this video brought back memories, whether happy or bittersweet, don't forget to like and share it to help spread this nostalgic story to even more people. Subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next time travel journey with Back to Yesterday. Thank you, and see you soon.